So welcome, Leonie, and welcome all the others who might join later. I'm Carolin, and I will be leading you through this webinar, and I would like to introduce you to my colleague, Alina.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Alina Goethel.
Hello.
Hello, Leonie. Nice to hear your voice.
Yeah, sorry, I just muted the microphone, but I've been listening. But since I'm the only one, I just wanted to say hello to you and thank you for the single show.
Yeah, thank you. So nice to hear you, to hear your voice. Yeah, I will support Carolin in the chat function of this webinar. So whenever you have a technical issue or whenever you have a question, just type it into this box here, and I will then remind Carolin to answer your questions. Yeah, so my name is Alina Grün. I'm also project manager at the Collective Leadership Institute. I'm responsible for Eastern Europe and Central Asian part, and also this is a very big dream of mine, supporting the collaboration in the academic education sector, so that this idea of collaboration and dialogic change, to bring it into the formal education sector, so that all people who are going to universities or universities of applied sciences, that they are learning how to create a constructive dialogue from the beginning. This is my dream. So, but jumping back to this webinar and the dialogic practices, how to engage in generative dialogue, Carolin will tell us much more interesting things. And yeah, so I'm here in the background. I will mute myself in some seconds, and Carolin can start. Okay, enjoy.
Okay, thank you, Alina. Thanks a lot. Okay, let's get going. We have half an hour, and this webinar is on the dialogic practices, how to engage in dialogue that is truly generative. I will start with introducing myself. So I'm Carolin Goethel. I'm a project manager and facilitator at the Collective Leadership Institute, and I'm mainly responsible for the French-speaking MENA region. Before I joined CLI, I was working in the civil society sector as well as social enterprise on migration issues and sustainable food systems. And I'm really passionate about deep ecology and about shedding light on the ways that everything is connected. And so for me, working at CLI is really great because I feel like I can enable people and leaders to lead from a place of connection to themselves, to each other, and to the earth. And I'm particularly interested in how we can lead better and more fruitful dialogues, which is why I'm really excited to give this little webinar today. Before diving into the dialogic practices, I would quickly like you to introduce you to the Collective Leadership Institute. So we are an independent non-profit organization based in Potsdam, and we also have another office in Cape Town in South Africa, and we were founded in 2005. Our mission is to empower leaders from across sectors to lead collectively towards a life-sustaining future and to implement solutions for the world's biggest sustainability challenges. We're very much aware that sustainability is a global issue and that the different dimensions of sustainability are connected. So we really see the necessity and the inevitability for collaboration across sectors and across borders, across nations, and across cultures. And this is really our expertise, is to build collaboration capacity. And I will look at this in a little bit. We really like to frame our work within the framework of the Sustainable Development Goals. There's a really nice graphic here that we got from the Stockholm Resilience Center that pictures the different dimensions or the different spheres of sustainability and of the Sustainable Development Goals. And these goals are really special because it's really in the first time of human history that in 2015, over 150 member states of the United Nations got together and decided on a on a commonly shared future for our planet, for our civilization, with very clear targets and very clear goals. And so there's 17 of these goals in different spheres, as you can see here: biosphere, society, and economy. And goal number 17 is the one on partnerships for the goals. And it's really the one that we are mainly working with. And so although we are working on the content as well, we are supporting initiatives and projects in ecological issues. So we've worked on climate change policy, on water security, biosphere protection on the ecological level. We've worked on societal issues like gender issues, women empowerment, on economic issues like unemployment, value supply chains. And we've also supported political processes like decentralization and democratization. We still have the strongest expertise in building partnerships and building alliances for the goals. And as I've already said, we come with a very systemic and holistic perspective. We see how a lot of initiatives who try to work independently from each other and who work in silos don't come very far. So we very much have a systemic viewpoint and emphasize the importance of connecting to different stakeholders, different partners, and building alliances, and also building partnerships between initiatives that work on the different goals, because it's very unlikely that one can only really focus on one goal. I mean, these goals are all connected, and our aim is really to build collaboration between actors working towards a variety of these goals. And how do we do that? Our work entails 4 pillars. The first pillar being capacity building, which mainly refers to the courses that we give. So we offer open courses that anyone can sign up to in various locations around the globe, not just in Potsdam, but also in South Africa, in Jordan, in Siem Reap, in Cambodia, and in Nairobi, in Kenya. And we also do tailor-made or on-site courses. So that means we come to our partners, we can come to you and tailor the content of the course to your initiative, to your audience and the people that you work with. So this is really about empowering individuals and organizations to lead collectively and to establish capacity for collective leadership. The second pillar that we work on is thought leadership. We deliver thought-provoking praxis-based research, which is all available on our website. So you can download all our papers on our website for free. And you can also find more information on the books that we've published. So it's really our director and co-founder Petra Kunkel, who's published various books so far, and who's also very actively attending conferences and has very many different speaking engagements, and who also has her own website and her own blog, which is linked later on in this presentation, which I would highly encourage you to check out. She has a very strong background in living systems theory, and that always comes through in our work as well. And living systems theory is also what is really underpinning our methodologies, which I will introduce you to in a bit. Okay, our third pillar is transformation support. So this really is us supporting various change initiatives that work on issues like climate change or like gender issues, anything really around the Sustainable Development Goals, where we come into the project and we teach or we facilitate our methodologies and support our partners with applying those methodologies and really implementing change. Fourth pillar is building and invigorating change networks, so networks of change agents. And the main way that we do that is through our network of collective leadership academies. And we have a certification track, so anyone who's interested can go through our 3 core courses and become certified as a collective leadership facilitator. And the idea here is really that we build capacity all around the globe, and we really want to support people to become leaders and also facilitators in their own region and build capacity in their own region and in their own local city or place. And so far we have collective leadership academies in Jordan and in the Ukraine, and we're very keen to grow this network of academies, but also just to network more with other initiatives and partners to really build networks of change agents. Brief introduction to our two core methodologies that we have developed here at the Collective Leadership Institute. So that is the Collective Leadership Compass and the Dialogic Change Model. I won't go too deeply into these methods, so if you would like to learn more about them, I would highly encourage you to either sign up to one of our courses or to check out our webinars on our YouTube channel, where you can find a deep dive into either of those. But just to briefly explain what they are about, the Collective Leadership Compass is a meta-level guiding structure based on 6 dimensions that you can use as a diagnosis tool. So you can analyze and diagnose yourself, your organization, or your system. And the idea is that if these 6 dimensions, or also core human competencies, are attended to and are in balance, that it brings a lot of aliveness into your initiative or into your system. The dialogic change model is a process methodology that really helps to plan and to implement your change initiatives in 4 different phases. And these methodologies also really nicely work together. And they both will be part of the course, The Art of Dialogue, which is happening in December in Potsdam. And this webinar is really thought as a little teaser to this course. Okay, let's have a look at the topic of today, which is the dialogic practices. And before we dive into these practices, it's probably important to become aware of what we even mean when we speak of dialogue, and to establish a common understanding of dialogue. So you see 2 pictures here, which for me show 2 people in a conversation, but in a very different kind of conversation. So at least for me, these pictures invoke different kinds of feelings about the kind of conversation that those 2 people are in. And I'm going to leave you with these pictures and provide you our definition of dialogue. A conversation between 2 or more people that serves the exploration of deeper understanding, coherence, and possibilities. The roots of the word dialogue are found in the Latin language, dia, referring to through, and logos referring to meaning or to word as well. So physicist David Bohm, who wrote extensively on dialogue, refers to dialogue as meaning flowing through us, which I think is a really nice definition. Another point on dialogue is that it really requires a very delicate balance between inquiry and advocacy. Inquiry meaning seeking to understand, so asking questions, but then also really listening, and advocacy referring to expressing a viewpoint and bringing across a perspective. Can be someone's own perspective or someone else's perspective, and while doing that, so while speaking out and while expressing, still being respectful of other people's viewpoints or perspectives. And I will come back to that in a while. But just to become a little bit more clear about the different types of conversations that there are, or that there could be, we have a little typology of conversations that will make, I think, what we mean when we speak of dialogue a little bit more clear. So starting with a serial monologue, which is quite a typical situation on most panels really, or on most conversations where there is a list of speakers, where every speaker really just wants to get across their own viewpoint and make a statement without necessarily even referring to the other speakers. So there's very little or no reference to each other. There's no inquiry into other people's viewpoints, not even a seeking to understanding where other people are coming from. So this form of conversation really doesn't allow for the group or the audience, or for anyone who's really there, to move beyond individual wisdom. It's really about understanding what one person has to say, but it doesn't permit the possibility of collective wisdom to emerge. It's very much thinking individually. The form of a discussion or debate is then when people or speakers actually start engaging with each other and answering to each other, but often this is done in a very oppositional way. So the intention is here really to try and convince others of one's own viewpoint, and also trying to control the outcome. There's hardly any inquiry or no inquiry, and it's really a win-lose type of situation. And I would say that a lot of us are probably also aware of this form of conversation. I think a lot of us do engage in debates or discussions where it is about just really arguing our own viewpoint and sticking in our own perspective a lot of the time. Okay, third conversation type on here is the facilitated conversation, which it actually often, when these patterns of a win-lose kind of debate become clear, facilitators are invited to ensure a more balanced conversation type, so balancing the input and also just facilitating and guiding the conversation, providing a structure, and also offering inquiry, offering questions, posing questions to the different speakers, which in a way allows an opening up of the speakers to different kinds of perspectives, and maybe already a little bit of reflection, but here it's still the facilitator who has this role of guiding the conversation. And in what we refer to as reflective dialogue, this is really where this role of the facilitator is assumed by the speakers themselves. So this is when speakers actually start reflecting on their own underlying assumptions and really unearthing their assumptions and their belief systems, and also themselves really starting to inquire into other people's viewpoints, asking questions, listening to each other, and also being willing to integrate different perspectives. So definitely a starting point to allowing some sort of collective thinking to emerge. But then the generative dialogue is really what enables true collective wisdom and intelligence to emerge. The idea here is that we don't only reflect on our assumptions, but that we become very clear about them and are even willing to question our assumptions. So it's about recreating these assumptions, recreating the underlying thinking patterns that we have. So it's a very different form of awareness that a generative dialogue permits. And because this is really about building on each other's ideas and maybe even developing new ideas, developing new solutions to problems, it's also very prone to creativity and innovation to emerge. And it's also about respecting and embracing difference and really seeing the value in different perspectives and different attitudes, different ideas and viewpoints coming together and really harnessing this diversity rather than seeing it as a hindrance. So it also produces commitment to whatever is developed, because everyone has been part of the dialogue and has been part of developing new ideas or developing an action plan, which then also comes with bigger commitment towards action and towards putting things in place. And as you can see here, there's an arrow moving from thinking alone towards thinking together, thinking collectively, and creating a collective intelligence field. And this is really where we want to move towards, and which is at the core of our work. So in order to get to these these generative dialogues, the 4 dialogic practices are really at the core. And so the practices are voice, listen, respect, and suspend. And while these 4 practices might seem very obvious, I think that it's really worth looking at each of them individually and diving a little bit deeper into them and really trying to seek to understand what it really means to voice, what it really means to listen and to respect, as well as to suspend. Because only really if these 4 practices are attended to and are in balance, collective intelligence or collective wisdom and this mode of thinking together can emerge. So let's start with voice. Voicing really refers to the ability to express one's own concerns, ambitions, intentions, or objectives with a voice from the heart. So it is about speaking authentically, about speaking from a place of what's true for oneself, and not necessarily copying other opinions or speaking about something that one doesn't even agree with or support. It's really important to become aware that the way that we speak actually influences the way that people listen. So clear speech and lean speech will make it easier for people to listen. And the other way around as well, if someone is a very attentive listener and very present when I speak, it means that I will feel more heard and more seen. And it's less likely that I will be repetitive and maybe insecure when I speak. So there's a very strong reciprocal dynamic between voicing and listening. If voicing is underdeveloped, it means that we don't speak enough, we don't express ourselves, so we might actually fail to bring ourselves, our intentions and our gifts into a conversation, but also into the world. If voicing is overdeveloped, it means that we speak a lot and we occupy enormous space. So we might not listen enough to others. And the facilitator's task, and I assume that you who are listening right now are interested in facilitating dialogue, maybe on a personal level, but maybe even on a professional level. So the facilitator's task is really to ensure that there's a good balance of voices and that all voices are being heard sufficiently. There's a few questions here that I have for you, questions for self-reflection, which I find myself really useful in this process of reflecting on one's own patterns and one's own strengths and maybe areas that need to develop more. So for voicing, these are: can I make myself heard? Do I get resonance when I speak? Do I have access to my own voice, or is it the voice of others? Do I dominate others with my voice? And what needs to be expressed right now? What is really important to say right now? And just really saying that without getting lost in repetitions and buffering around. Really, this is about lean speech. Okay, let's move to the second practice, listen. So listening is about the ability to create space where people can genuinely express themselves. So deep listening, or active listening as it is also often called, is about really letting people speak and letting people finish without interruptions, and being fully present and fully attentive to when someone speaks. It's about recognizing and accepting other people's rights to an opinion, even if they differ from my own opinion. And this is really important, to really listen to other perspectives, because it will help me to increase my capacity to really see the whole picture and not just be stuck in my own perspective and in my own ways of thinking. So listening is really core for assuming a more systemic, a more holistic perspective. And listening is also really key for creating trust. So in any dialogue, whether it's a one-to-one conversation, or whether it's a more structured stakeholder dialogue in a more professional setting, listening is key to create trust. If I don't feel listened to, I don't feel heard, I don't feel seen, I'm very unlikely to start trusting the people that I'm with, that I'm having a conversation with. So listening is really key. And it's also a prerequisite for the next practice, of the other one, suspend. So attentive listening really enables us to suspend judgment, to not start thinking about what we will reply or start getting caught up in our own argument while someone else is speaking, but really listen with full presence and attention. If listening is underdeveloped, and we speak a lot and don't listen enough, it can mean that we believe that we're always right, or that we're more intelligent than others. And if it's overdeveloped, so we don't speak enough and we listen a lot, it can have the risk of losing our own stance, our own viewpoint. Our questions for self-reflection here: am I able to listen, or do I tend to interrupt frequently? Can I listen for the whole? And this really means, am I not just listening to what I want to hear, but am I listening to everything that is being said? Am I able to listen from the present moment and not from my memory? And this also means maybe leaving certain assumptions on hold and just really listening with a fresh mind, with a beginner's mind, to whatever is being said. And also listening to what is emerging, to the emerging story and emerging thoughts. So can I be still and listen to emerging thoughts? That's the last question. Okay, let's move to dialogic practice number 3, respect. So respect is the ability to respect other viewpoints, other people, even if they don't agree with me, even if I don't share their viewpoint. It's about seeing others as legitimate in their being and in their acting differently to myself. So it is really about embracing diversity and harnessing diversity, but whilst also seeing what I have in common with others and what we share. So whilst also having that feeling of shared humanity and empathy. So really striking this balance, which is really not always easy. And it's also about honoring boundaries, my own boundaries, but also the boundaries of others. If respect is underdeveloped, it means that it can lead to conversational violence, to interruptions, to trying to impose my own opinions, trying to manipulate a conversation. And if respect is overdeveloped, it means that I might shy away from expressing my own opinion, and I might actually lack personal boundaries because I attend too much onto other people's needs. Okay, questions for self-reflection here. Can I respect difference without agreeing? Do I honor the boundaries and integrity of another person, but also my own? Am I able to hold tension and conflict? And am I prepared to take responsibility for a situation, or do I blame others? Okay, last dialogic practice is suspend. So suspending is really the ability to withhold judgment and not coming to conclusions too quickly. And I think most of us probably know this scenario when we start a conversation with someone and they've only really said a few words or maybe a few sentences, and we immediately think that we know everything that they want to say, or that we know what kind of person they are, and we start judging them. And yeah, I'm sure that we all know this process. So the invitation here in suspension is to not judge so quickly and not jump to conclusions too quickly, but to really wait and listen first, and then try to really expand this pause before I make a judgment and before I start listening, and really maximize this pause of suspension. Suspension is also about being able to question my own assumptions, being aware of my own assumptions and being able to question them. So it's really a key practice for facilitators and for creating constructive communication patterns and generative dialogues and reaching consensus. If the ability to suspend is underdeveloped, it can lead to unshakable certainty and a desire to control the outcome of a conversation. If it's overdeveloped, it means that I might be holding back my opinion or my real opinion. Questions for self-reflections here. Can I hold what I think is certain lightly enough? Do I always want to be right? Can I acknowledge different opinions without agreeing? And what leads me to view things the way that I do? Okay, so this was a little introduction into the 4 dialogic practices. And yeah, the invitation here is to take a moment, maybe after this webinar, and reflect a little bit on your own strengths. So which practices are more easy for you, and where might you have to develop a little bit more. And especially if you're keen to facilitate conversations, it's good to pay attention to the different levels of awareness that there are. So every conversation has a certain pattern, a certain dynamic, a certain energy, and also examining that as a facilitator on different levels is really key. And of course, starting with oneself, so reflecting on what are my own assumptions before I enter a conversation, what are my own belief systems, my value systems, is really the starting point for anyone who wants to have a certain level of awareness and who wants to facilitate conversations. And then moving that into the level of direct interaction. How do I enter into a conversation? What kind of patterns, what kind of dynamics do I exhibit when I'm in conversation with other people? And also what kind of energy does it create? And really observing these patterns in a conversation with others. How much space do I leave others? And also observing how others react and what others' patterns are. Moving it onto a higher level would be the level of the group and also the level of the process. So this is about acknowledging not just the collectively held assumptions or belief systems, but also just the general energy of the group. Yeah, what's the energy level? What is the vibe? What is kind of the framework, the paradigm that the conversation is being held in? What seems safe to be said, or what doesn't seem so safe to say? And then eventually the level of the system. And here, this is also very much about becoming aware and maybe unearthing the culture that this conversation is a fractal of, and the paradigm that are at the base of this culture. And yeah, so this is an invitation to use this idea of the different levels of awareness, self-awareness, group awareness, systems awareness, and also use it for the design of the process. So develop a certain competence in designing a process. So the conclusion of analyzing these different awarenesses is really to then take this into account when designing a dialogue of stakeholders, for example. So if I become aware that there's a lot of participants or stakeholders in my group, in my conversations, who are very strong at voicing, I might want to develop the competency of listening a little bit more in my process. So that would be something to take away from this model and from this tool. Okay, so we're coming towards the end of this little presentation. Just a last slide with the upcoming courses. As I mentioned, the Art of Stakeholder Dialogue, which features both our methods, is happening in December from the 11th to the 14th here in Potsdam. So if you're interested in that, you can find more information on our website. But then we also have lots of other courses coming up next year in different locations, from Kenya to South Africa to Cambodia and to Jordan. And yeah, if you're interested, have a look on the website and you can find more information. And then eventually a slide with a picture of our team. So thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope yeah, there's something for you that you can take away. And yeah, feel free to visit our website, also Petra's website, and check out our Compass tool, which you can use to analyze your own competences or the bigger system.